Hello future tech leaders, I am Sindhuja. Based on my own experience, I know that learning the right skills can shape our future. What if I say learning was as thrilled as the tech world itself? There we go. A cloud foundation, that's exactly what you will experience. From day one, you will be immersed in the interactive sessions and expert-led courses that covers most of the widely used technologies in the zone of data science to cloud computing, which brings more light to the life of a techie. I'm so excited to help you and unlock the true potential of a technology. Well, then why to wait? Let's see what it unfolds.
Let's start with schedulers. The purpose of scheduler and what is schedulers all about in AEM. Many a time, what we want in AEM is a functionality that if that is set of code should automatically get executed at a particular time. That like we want that they need a batch sort of job, which like where we need to connect to some third party and get the data from them and store it in AEM, which we need to show later now. Now, the thing is that this functionality can be, of course, like what we need is that this job or this job should run on daily basis or at a particular time maybe, and it should execute by itself with the time at a time defined and fetch the data from third party and store it in AEM, which we can later use. Now these sort of tasks like nightly job on every night at a particular time, that this job will run and will get the data from the third party and will save it. For these type of requirements where we know that we need to execute a set of code at a particular time and that thing is independent of our front end or is independent of the is an asynchronous sort of work. Like it doesn't need that. Like in the current flow, in the current user flow, we do not need that execution. But it's like it's a backend in asynchronous thing. That we wanted asynchronous sort of code. For that we use scheduler. Basically in schedulers, let me show it to you the one already provided. Here, if you see, here is a simple scheduler. This is a simple scheduler and what the scheduler says is that it will execute at a particular predefined time which we can define over here, like here, through the cron expression. Basically here we provide the cron expression, that through the cron expression which we tells that this scheduler or basically this job will execute at this particular time, or we can also specify the date, time and year, month. Everything we can specify with the help of cron expression. Here we are saying that this scheduler will execute every 30 seconds, because the first is second, then we have minute and I think then hour and all. We have the cron expression where we are saying that it should execute every 30 seconds like by this way. And this is the property name that we have to use to tell that to tell the cron expression. If you remember, we discussed about the OSGI configuration. In the same way, we have created the OSGI configuration over here as well, like we use the class definition and notation. The only difference is that we use this configuration instead of creating this in a separate class. Like if you remember, we created over here sample configuration, we created it inside a separate class. But here what they have done is they have created it as an inner class. This is an inner class, this configuration, because we know that this configuration would be used inside only this particular scheduler. We created this configuration and we provided the scheduler expression. This is the cron expression which tells us which particular time my scheduler will execute. Here I've set that particular at 30 seconds every 30 seconds. And what I'm doing here, if you like, I hope you know the Java concepts here to create every job. It is a normal job basically to create a separate thread. What we do is we implement it with the enable interface and provide the run method. That's what is being done over here. We provided the run method. What it will do is the mainstream thread will keep on executing like it is executing and keep serving the end client's request, and behind the scene a new thread will be created to execute this job. A new thread which will have its own memory, has its own space, will be allocated to this thread and it will be executing as a separate thread at this particular time. This thread will be created and then this thread will execute. It's like that this scheduler or this job doesn't interfere with the current implementation or with the current thread. You can say these are tasks where you need basically a back-end asynchronous job to be executed, where a separate bed memory should be allocated. We use scheduler for that, and we always implement it with the enable interface, and in the configuration always use the scheduler. This property scheduler underscore expression, scheduler underscore content, a scheduler underscore expression always tells us the cron expression when this scheduler will be executed. There is another property, that is scheduler, which says that my current thread is executing and I know that every 30 seconds it will be executed. Consider that my thread 1 is executing, which is serving by this scheduler's work, and this scheduler didn't complete within 30 seconds. Maybe because of the resource didn't got allocated to this open up and the 30 seconds got spent allocating the resources, and a new thread gets started because we know that this scheduler will run every 30 seconds. Here, what we said is scheduler concurrent is false. That means till that time my first thread for any currently executing doesn't complete, the next thread will not start. It's working. We said scheduler content is false. If we say scheduler content is true, then multiple, like all the maybe multiple, or it depends upon how resources gets allocated to that thread. There can be high chances that multiple get started simultaneously. And this can happen in case if the cron expression, if that job has to execute on regular intervals, like in our case, it's executing every 30 seconds. In that case, of course, it's better the scheduler content should be false, that multiple threads should not execute currently. And here what we did is we provided the run method, which will actually we will write the business logic. You remember, we use the activate method inside the service, like in the service, we use the activate method. We are over here. You can see at the rate activate. Here also we have the add rate activator. Basically your scheduler is also a service. And here we provided the run method which will actually perform. Alright, here we write. We will write the business logic like if you want to connect to some third party or you want to perform some work in an asynchronous way, then this run method will contain all the business logic. Now what we are doing is we are just simply printing simple schedule. Task is now running with some parameters that we have provided as part of our configuration. If I show you inside the cracks, let me open the logs, and if you remember, We created that sample log because all our logs will go. You can see the logs are on daily basis. It is creating. Let me open the latest one and let's try to find. You can see it's executing every 30 seconds. This is executing every 30 seconds. This scheduler is executing and it's executing by its own. Nothing is being. Here you can see the parameter is not. Parameter is printing null because in parameter the value is not there. Because if I open, and what's the name of my configuration? The name is a scheduled task. A scheduled task. Let me just here you can see a scheduled task and here the parameters not. Here let me add some. It is sample. Let's just simply save it and let's see if in our code this new parameter starts coming inside the log. I think let's just wait for another 30 seconds because every 30 seconds basically, this is the purpose of a scheduler, where everywhere you can schedule a job at a particular time, and that time is defined with the help of the cron expression, which you always have to supply as part of this expression. It's the way it's written. Like you know that's the function right shader expression. That's actually means. You can say it's a function, but it's an attribute. It's an attribute of a configuration like that. This scheduler expression is basically like if you see over here in the schedule task, this is over here. This next basically it's attribute of the OC configuration. And then like say, for example, if you want to do this configuration, these are parameters inside the code, except we can do something that we did last session, right? Like this parameter. You mean like we are passing some extra parameter in the configuration. Is that what you mean? The one that you just said. For example, you put 30 seconds and if you want a new parameter, just I mean like we do not want to configure from the configuration console, you know what I'm saying. Like I did like last session. You told me that, for example, if you don't want to configure, if you go to the console, the system we don't want to configure from here. Like say, we want some configuration, we can create the XML, for example, right? The XML would be created by using this simple schedule task. Here like this, I will copy the whole package and it would be inside the ifs. Here I can create the XML like new and this file, this and what is the name of my this. That's gone. I mean you understood. I hope. Like here because the XML is created by the name of the service that is referring the configuration, not by the configuration. Always remember this thing. And also we can access to some of the pages as well. here, right? Like say, if some pages are published from other site, we want to have a scheduler to somehow, or know. And I say, if any content is uploaded, then we want to publish that page. But content is uploaded, like any images or something in the DAM folder. And then, for example, it's been set in some of the components. Like we upload some images in a DAM folder and then we give the pass inside the component, some of the component using that image. Then they save and publish the page, and then somehow we want to put the scheduler and this page itself actually see in case if you mean that there's a new image that is being uploaded and this image is being used on inside a component. Now you refer that image inside the component of the author instance and you activated that page, but that image is still not there on the publisher instance. It's still there only on the author instance because it has not been activated. You mean here we can use a scheduler to get activated or gets executed at a particular time. Now, if an image is uploaded, then it's not, and you have to replicate that image. For replicating that, if you use a scheduler, that is not at all good. That is not even an approach. Scheduler C. This now becomes the responsibility of the authors to activate that image as well. This is not. This should not be handled from code, neither through scheduler, neither through any other way, neither they get through any other way, but it should be the governance of the authors. In case if they have uploaded a new image and I'm using it on a component which they have activated now, it is their responsibility to activate that image as well. Schedulers are being used when you want to perform some nightly job like you consider. You think that at night there is very less traffic. During that time, you can perform some work like some complex operation. That more resources, since there is less traffic on your site, more resources can be given to that thread and your bulky task can be completed. That for that purpose, you can use scheduler. That your task will be executed at a particular time. Yes, the important thing to remember over here is that this property should always be the scheduler content and scheduler expression. Let's now go and about Adaptive Framework. No, in the sling model. How do you adapt? Are you aware of that? Adaptables, I know like you adapt the conformal like. Let me just more clarify. Let's say, let me go to pick at this and let me open cracks. We have this test page and like you were saying here we have the word, this component, this sample word component. Now we have these properties, and important thing is that this thing source type, sling resource type is telling that where exactly is the script of the code written that is responsible for entering this node on the page. Now consider that in your this node there is a child node. Now this child node has some properties like a prop, let's say prop1. I say it's well. Let me put it in this way first, and the value is first, similarly second, second, and similarly. Let's say the simple properties is what I am putting. Some random property now. Now when this component will be executed on the page, of course, we know that the script will be called. That is sample word. And when the sample word script will be called, what will happen is that your sample word.html will be called. Am I right? The sample word will be called, and from here this sling model will get called. Am I right? Yes. Now here, what we did is we automatically injected all the values of this node. All the properties of this node got automatically injected inside of a sling model. Because of this whole relationship, from here we went inside our component. From component of, we know the component HTML, that is the script will get executed, and then from there we went inside the sample model Java file. That is a whistling model. Now this is our node and there is a child node. That is simple. Now if you want to read the properties of this, how will you do? That is, one is you have the current resource, like here this sample model. What it will represent is resource. What here I am saying is that this resource object is my current risk. By using add the red sling object annotation, I am able to automatically get my current source and what is my current resources. This is my current resource. You agree? Here, by using add the red sling object annotation, I got the current result. Now, if you want to read the values or the properties of the child resource below their current resource, what you will do? Let me create a method public human like resource that gets value map and like that gets rightly. Exactly. Get this source prop. What you will be doing is resource dot get initially. You will get the child resource because this is the sample, is the child resource of my current resources, which is sample word. First, I will get the child. What you have to provide is the name. What is the name of my child? Resource sample. And then get value map. Or get value map. Now this will return me. What it will return me is the value map. Am I right? Here, what I did is I got the value map of this and and now I can get the property. Let me see which property I wanted is the first. Let's say the third property is what I wanted. Here, what is the property name? Third, and what type it is? It is simple string and let me return this value now. This resource property in your code. What you will do is here you will say child, the source property, and how will you print? That is my model dot and like this, and now I have to build this. For building, I will go back to my code be not this one. Oh, that's great. Now I know it's just my. Instead of building the whole code, I know from front end this is the only chain and from back end this is the chain. Let me only build the back end and in HTML I will directly make change inside my. That will reduce the auto install bundle because I just wanted to build my code. Yes, this profile I use, which will of course it will build and also it will deploy my code. Let's just wait. What you did? You didn't do what we have done, like with the sample word properties. Right, Sari? You see, in the model, initially we inject the thing right in our code, but how will you inject the properties of child node? For that, actually, that's what I wanted to tell you. I initially told you this way, but the correct way, or this is also a correct way of course, but the best way is the adapt to framework that I will tell you after this. Let's see if it is built. It's built it, that's great. Let's just go and copy over this thing and let's go inside the XD. Let me just refresh it. At the same time, let me cancel this. Let me do this side. Mine apps my bridge for a sample component and our component name is, what was the name of your company? Sample word. Here I have it and here I have the. Let me put this code and let me, just for now, remove the rest of the code. I don't want this old. Let me also remove this and put a bra over here, and let's go to our page and we will open the page that are the properties should be displayed. We added this. You can see the child resource property is third because we printed the third property. Now, if I go below to my content hierarchy, and just what I do is simply change my discard to, let's say, let me make it as 4, 4, not 4. 4, the same of course, will be updated on pages. You can see it over here. Alright, yes, and the problem is that for this, for my current resource, I was able to automatically inject all the properties like over here. Why not for my child resource? If I have a child resource like this from my current resource, I should also be automatically inject the values of my child resource. That is the thing. Here, what we will do is let me create a new one. Let me do one thing. Let me just copy this only and paste it over here, and let's say it is some child sample model. What I did is I just created this, and let me remove all. Let me firstly remove all the unnecessary code which I do not need. Let me just remove this all. Now I have these. Let me also remove these because I do not. How will I inject the values? Like through first. This will become first, then I have second, and then I have third. Let's inject these. First, and this will be second because the property name should match, and this will be third. Let me create the getters. What I will do is I will go generate and let generate only getters. We do not need setters. But how the values will be set? Because we have created this model and we are saying the values will automatically be injected. But how for this sample model, the values getting injected? Because it was getting called from our sample word.html. From the script, it was getting called. That indicated that the model is my current resource. But how will this be now make this child model recognized from the parent? What we will do is, this is my current source now. What's the problem now? The problem is that, as of now, what we did is we got the value of one of the property of the child resource. Now, if you have a lot of property, let's say 10 or 20 or 30, then you have to write this code for each and every of those properties. You have to get the child resource, get the value map, and then get the values. Much of code. What do is public void get child. More done. And here what I will do is my resource, which is my current resource. My current resource is this, and what I will do is dot get child, which is my this. Here I got the child, And now I got the child resource. What I got on here is my child resource. Now I will say adapt to, and this is loose. This is a child resource. I wanted to adapt to my child sample model. Child sample model dot plus. And here what I will get is, as an is child sample model, all the values of my child resource will now automatically get injected inside this model. And I do not have to fetch each and every properties value of this child model by using this code. Now all the properties have been injected inside this child sample model of my this child resource, and now I have the object of this. This way, consider if you have multiple children nodes, then by this solution you would have to iterate over each and every children, and that iteration is but then you have to get the properties of each and every child node. But here of course you need to iterate over each and every child node. But while you can simply get the resource of the child resource or child node and just adapt it into the model class. Now here I have this. It's basically like you create an instance of the child sample model, and then inside this child simple model, we inject all the properties. Yes, all the properties of the child resource are automatically injected into this link model. Now let me return this over here, and what you can do is inside your I have to return this. Let me return this and let me build this code now in my front end code. What I will do is here, I will now, instead of using this way, what I will do is my child model. This my model. From here, I need to call this method child model prop. This child model prop is what I will call and return is. It will return with this child sample model, and here I can then call this first. I directly call it like this dot first, and let's make f small. Let's just firstly try this and parallelly again see what I did. Of course, I have the object of this and I call this method this method. It returned me the object of this, and from this, from its object, I of course can call the methods of this class. The methods of this class are to get first, get second, and that's what I'm calling over here. Here I got this. Call this method. From this, I call the first. Let me see if it gets deployed. It's getting deployed. This is Adapt to Framework. Through this way, you can automatically adapt. Sorry, not adapt. You can inject the values of child resources into n-sling model, and you do not have to read each and every value of all the child nodes or child resources like this. When we say resource that get child sample adapt to this thing, it means that we are adapting the child model to our current resource, right? We are not adapting child model to my current resource, but I am adapting my child model to the child resource. To see here from the current resource, I got the child resource sample resource. What I did is I got the child resource. That is my resource, and this is what I have to these values I have to inject. That is, I got the resource of this and then I injected that then I adapted this resource into this model. Yep, yes, our code is built. Let's just go and refresh it. And here let's just put our code inside the file and then I have mine. Simple word for 80 mil. And here what I have to write is this. Let me just copy this and let me paste it. Now it should print our first value. And the value of this first is, what is the value? Oh yes, let's refresh this and let's see. You can see first over here. This is Adapt to framework where automatically we are injecting, not automatically but manually. Manually, we are like from current resource, from a resource, we are injecting all its value to one sling model. You see this type of question is sometimes like if you have a navigation component where there is a parent node and you have a multiple child nodes and all the child node has same set of properties. They consider there are 50 child nodes and all the child nodes property 3, property 1, like all the property names are same. Now if you have to iterate over all the child nodes and read the property and form and like objects out of those and place that object in the list and provide it to front end. But it's the best solution, of course. From the parent you have to iterate over child and from child you get automatically inject all the child resource properties into a sling model by using this adaptive framework. The other way would have been that from each child, you have to read each and every value and then put those values inside and pose your class through and setter. And then you have to form that object. Place that object inside the list now instead of setting each and every value of the resource inside a pojo. You can use the adapt to framework. And now if we want to one thing that if you want to access it from here, then what we should do, if you want to like say, I want to access the properties of child node and like say, put it in a here. Let me just show it to you that as well. Here what we did is, see, I mean one thing is that I put the whole board in a single line. The best. I mean like here, what I did is let me just comment this code for now. Let's keep this code for now and let's say, this is the current resource that I got. This is right. And now from child resource. Suppose we know we can get the value map of this here. Dot get whatever the value you would like. First this ring dot class. This is another way, but of course what it could be. But in the back end thing, and there's this only option right in the if you want to give a JSON response, this is the only one only option. Now is if you want to get you get this model, and this model can automatically be converted into a JSON by using the JSON to JSON. Again, you have to read the properties and put those values inside a JSON. When an object can be converted into a JSON. In case, if you don't know, JSON provides the API through which and Java objects can be converted into a JSON. If we have this Java object, who has all these values. All these values are here. Automatically, it can be converted into a JSON. You have to read each and every value and create a JSON object and put those values inside. This is one big code which is old way. This was the adaptive framework. Let's now go to our another thing. That is the Sling APIs. Or basically, how would you perform the CRUD operations in them? If you want to read the repository, update anything in the repository, or modify some node or delete something, how would you do those things? Now we can go through those. Basically, let's start with that concept of how would you perform CRUD operation in the jQuery. Basically, you are performing CRUD operation, create, read, update, delete. How would you perform this code operation form in the jQuery? Basically, it provides two sets of. One is the jQuery APIs, another is called as the Sling API. When we use the resource thing, this resource.getChildren, and when we use the source and resources, all work API. These are called as Sling API. We have two types of API. One is Sling, another is jQuery. These are the Sling API when you use the source resources all over to do all your things, and other is the jQuery where we use the node and the session thing. Node from. Because we know every resource or node is used interchangeably. Like here, you are getting the value of the resource in the same way. This is our Sling APIs. But in the same way, you can also read the properties of a resource by using node APIs itself. Let me just show you. Here, let's name this method as Sling APIs. Just and comment, because here we are using the resource. What I did is resource.getChildren value map, and I read the values over here. Here First thing we understood. How would you read something from CRUD? We know C. How would you we know read? How would you read something? You get the resource, you can get the child, and then you can get the value map. In the same way, if you want to modify something here, like if you have this resource, this value map, and from this resource, what this resource is, this is your sample result. That is a child resource, and you get value map out of it, and then you get this children now here. Here, let me use another method, not use this method. Get resource API. Here I got this value map and let's say void. Here, if you want to add some property to your current source here as of now, which all properties are there? First, let me delete this. You have first, second and third. Let's consider if you want to add the fourth property. Fourth, and the value has fourth. And here is source dot. Get the source resolver dot. Commit. It's throwing some exception. We have to handle this exception. Add two methods in nature. Pretty simple. But added is in the resource I get the value map of it, and in the value map, of course, we know we can get the properties, but we can also set the properties in a value map by using this put method. I used the port and I inputted this fourth property with its value just a minute. Now what I wanted is there was a modifiable. What I did is I added the property in this and then I said this source.get the source resolver.commit. Like we have session in Java. Similarly, there is a session in AEM as well, which we will discuss later. Like we have session in Java. We have resources, all work in pane. It's all over. It does all the things that session does. If you want to commit something or if you want to read something or like what all those like commit an operation and a session. All those things are being done with the alport all over here. And let me do it in this way. Let me use an child sample resource. And here I can use this instead of writing everything in the same line. Now also another operation. This was adding property and node the other. If delete a node, delete a resource. Here, let's say you have the child sample is old and you have considering you have a child with the name child sample. This becomes the sample. Let me rename it to child sample and here also. Let me rename it to child sample and here as well. I just renamed the node name and what? I assume that there is a child node to this child sample with the name child sample. And let me get the resource. And this child is source. Now what I want is to delete this. I will say, let me also get the resources over here. Let me name it as R. What I get is over here. I get the resources all work, and let's put it over here and delete and the resource that you wanted to delete. See, what I did is again showing it to you. From the current resource, I get the resources. All work here through resources. All one is similarly like we have session in Java resources, all work. Firstly, from resource, current resource, I get the child resource whose name should be child sample. I assume that here I have this current resource and they should be child sample. In the child sample resource, what I wanted is to add another property. I added it in this way, and from the child sample over here, I assume that there should be another child. Let me name it as grandchild. Grandchild, not child, it's grandchild sample, and I wanted to delete that resource. Here, let me just create another node with the name grandchild sample. Let me deploy this code. I am deploying this code where we are performing all the operations. Firstly, we read this and then we are heading and we are deleting a grandchild sample, grandchild resource. It's completed. Now, the only thing that we have to do inside our HTML is sorry to call this method, but what is my method is resource API. Here I will again go to Minecraft and will give a call to this method. Here inside, not inside my sample components, and where is my sample component? Over here, and let me call this method. How can I call? Since this method is all doing the back end stuff, I do not need to print anything but just call this method because it's returning void and some performance, some backend operation where I am adding a property to a node and deleting a node here. I save this and I call this method, and once I will refresh my page. Our assumption is that there should be a property that should get added and also this node should be deleted. Agreed? Let's just refresh it and let's go. The thing goes well. The page is getting refreshed. Let's see. Let's refresh this. One thing good is that this is still there. It's not deleted and the property is also not added. I think something broke. Public void resource API. Some issue looks to be over here. Let's try to find out by checking the logs what has broken. What I can do is I can go to either I can open the system like inside the cracks. We know that, and I told you the other way to look for logs, which is not considered as good. But just for time being, I'm going to the log support, and here we have the sample error. Just click on this and let's see if anything got failed. There doesn't look like anything failed. Then what exactly happened? Let me refresh the C write. I refreshed my page. If I refresh my page, of course my one thing and the page. Did we mention the methods? Yes, here we are calling this method. Let's see what could be the issue. Let's see, our method is getting already there. Nothing looks like failed. There is no exception, at least in the code. This shows I get child, I get the value there. Then I put it over here. Let's put a debugger over here. Sorry, logger.debug. Let's see if I am using the debugger. Let's use like this. Put it over here. Debugger.debug. Let's put it below like over here. We deleted this and then we commit our things. I think everything looks good. Let's build our code for now. Let's see saucy get or social where I get the child. Put the value, let's see, it's a success. Let me again go and refresh the page. Let's see what's there in our logs. It doesn't look like it's even calling our method. There's no log. It doesn't look like it's even calling our method. Let me open the HTML of my component. It's my model resource, API. The method name is correct. Why it is not calling even here? It is calling resource API. Here you see, it called my, but after that it didn't executed any other thing. Instead, its source API method, and after that it got failed. Just one thing, you're logging with admin, right? Yes, I'm logged in with admin. I think some issue. I know the mistake. I think let's not do it in that. I think to get the resource resolver, also we have to use the here, also have to use this annotation sling object. Any errors there? I hope there is no error. Now let's build this and also put another debugger over here. Here to get the resource current resource object or resource resolver object, we have to use the sling object annotation, right? Let's see for resource resolver as well. You put the annotation. Yes, let me remove all my logs. Let's see the page. Let's see. You can see now it called and it called this, but after that again some issue occurred. Looks like the issue is something else, not that one. Here, I think it is still there. I think the issue is over here, get value map. This, I think, is causing the issue because I have to use modifiable value map casting, right? It's casting. I think just let's decide on that. It's not responding just. This is the mistake. I have to use modifiable value map and not value map. Let's try this. Let's see. Let's see, it's done. Go back, let me refresh my page. Let's see. Now let's see. Now you can see the grandchild sample node has been removed, and here we have our fourth property as well. For putting we use modifiable value map. Yes, that's the mistake we were doing. We actually have to use modifiable value map, not the simple value map. That's the mistake we were doing. This way we can get the modifiable value map from a resource. Just a tap to, and then you can put any number of values that you want. And to delete a resource, just go to get that resource, and resource is all over. Like I use basically its resource solver, then call the method delete these. This is the Sling API. In the same way, all the operations, each and every operation that you do with the Sling API, these are again Sling API. What you can do is what you can do with the JCR APIs. These are two different ways of achieving the same thing, that is, performing the crowd operation. I would tell let's start with the JCR APIs. But let me firstly write some JCR APIs, and then I will tell you which one to use and when. This is JCR. Let me just update the comments. You can see sometimes debugger logs also have to identify where exactly our pod is sailing. Firstly, like you, by using the resource only, we get the child resource. And now from the child resource, what we did is we adapt to modifiable value map. Let's say here from a resource you can get a node which is actually your JCR API, which is actually a part of your JCR API. Here each and every operation, this is my child sample node. Every operation that you can do with the resource or basically the Sling API is what you can do with the node or JCR API. This is my JCR API. Like here I got this node, and if you want to get any property, like if you want to read any property, then you can read the property. And which property do you want to read? Let's say it is the fourth property that we just added is what you wanted to read here. And here we read the fourth property. Like over there we were using the value map. Here you can go get the current. Let me just clean this code a bit till here. Let's forget about this. The fourth property that we previously added, how you can read it. By using the JCR API or the node API, you can go to that particular node and use the get property and the name of the property and the type in which you want to read that property. Here we have it, and we can reply it back that this is the value. Now, similar way, you have set property as well. If you want to set the fifth property, you can set it. Set it this way, pretty simple. If you want to set this property, you can set it in like this way, we got the node. In the same way, from resources over, we can get the session class. When you are using JCR API or basically the node API, there you cannot like. Here we committed using the resource solver, but here you cannot commit it with the resource solver. You have to commit it by using session. Here we get the session. And what I am going to do, since I added this property, I will say session save. Like previously we were doing this commit. Let me remove this code for now. And let me also remove this thing. What I did is, this is what we did is from resource. Basically from here, from resource, we adapt to a node, and in the same way, from resource solver, we adapt to a session. When you are using the JCR API, that is the node API, you cannot commit it by using resource, but you have to use the session to save the session. Now what we did is in the child sample property, we set a new property over here and now and here what we are doing is we are reading the value of this property. We are reading the value and here we are setting it. And also if you want to remove a child node, like here, we get the form child sample node. I can get it child node. What is the name? Is grandchild. Let me name it as grandchild node. Earlier we named it as grandchild sample. Let's use this only grandchild sample. Here I said grandchild sample, and this is the node which is grandchild node, and from here you can delete it. Sorry, remove this. It's basically pretty simple. You go to that node and write remove. That node will be removed. But we need to make sure that that node is over there. Here, I will create this node and also I will deploy this code. Just let me firstly I go through this code again. Whatever it is, from the current resource, I get the child resource and I adapted that to a node. From here, we started working with the JCR API. From here, we get the node. From resource solver, we get the session because we ultimately have to save the session when we are using the node APIs. Here we read the property, get the property, and read the value of it. Here we set a new property and then we delete the child, grandchild, basically grandchild node. You can follow grandchild resource. Here we removed it and ultimately we saved the session. In the end, every time you are performing some modification or deletion, you have to save the session. For reading, of course, we do not need to save the session. Neither do we need a session. If you are simply reading, then we do not need the session. Object for modification, for deletion, for creation, we would need a session and we have to save the session. Let me just run this. And what we will do is now we will call out this method instead of calling our getResource, a PI method. Everything that you do with the JCR API, you can do with the Sling API, and whatever you can with the Sling is what you can do with the JCR. Let's firstly see if all the code that we have written with the Sling with the JCR API is also working as expected, and then we will understand why are these two APIs over there and which one to use. Which one is best to use? Because this is many times being asked, and also we need to have an understanding that which API is best from performance perspective, because that API is what you will use, or which API is better to use from development perspective. There is always a balance that need to be seen between the two, that is performance and usability. Yes, this is done, and let me update my HTML. Let me delete, close all the tabs to the right, and also this let me remove or update my log file by removing everything from inside my log file. Let me go inside apps with my sample over components. Here is my sample button sample, and here let me call instead of scale it. I called my JCR API, and what I am expecting is that over here a fifth property should get added, and of course this should get removed. Let me refresh this. Let's go over here and refresh it. One good thing is you can see there is this fifth property added and also the grandchild node is being removed. Both our operation worked. First was to add this property and the other was to remove, and of course when we are doing some modification or deletion or creation. We have to save our session. This is Link and JCR API as of now. Any questions in these two APIs or the working model of these two APIs? Just one question for this Link API. If we want to use modifiable value map, we should adapt our normal one to the modifiable, right? Yes. If you need to adapt to a modifiable value map, and then you can do it. Now, if no questions with respect to the working of these two APIs, now let me tell you that the main purpose of these two and which one you should use and pretty important. This is pretty important because code you can get it from anywhere. You need to understand the code. You understood it. Now the important thing, see, if you source APIs, which is our Slink APIs, the main benefit is that you can use the adapt to framework which we just discussed. Where was that this? With the resource API. You can easily adapt all the properties of a resource into Slink model and you can directly get all those property injected. But with JCR API, there is no such adapt to framework. If I have to read the properties like I'm doing over here, I'm reading the properties, then there is no way I can automatically inject all the values of this node into a Slink model. I have to use the core way of working, that is, read each and every property. One thing now. The main thing is that Slink APIs is basically a layer of abstraction above the JCR APIs. Ultimately, it is the JCR APIs only which was behind the scene, even if you are using the Slink APIs as well. Slink APIs is basically provide more better features from development perspective. Your development becomes easy. You get a lot of utility classes, like if I showed you the adaptive framework, similar way like if I show you this and resource util. And by using this resource util, you see you can do a lot of things. Like you can get create. You can say create or update resource, get or create resource automatically. You can create a resource in case if it is not available. There are a lot of out-of-box methods provided in this utility that you can use and that will reduce your code and simplify your coding. But ultimately these resources or basically the Slink APIs behind the scene make the use of this JCR APIs only. Ultimately, it is the JCR APIs only that can, but for better readability or better development, we make the use of resource APIs. From performance perspective, of course, it is JCR APIs which are better because ultimately with Slink APIs also, it is a JCR API that get executed. If we directly use this JCR API, of course, the performance will be better. If you think that it's a very complex operation where you need performance to be better, you make the use of JCR. Otherwise, in all, make the use of Slink APIs, which helps you in better writing the code and reduce the number of lines of code. Got it? Got the thing? Slink API is also behind the scenes, uses or basically execute JCR API. That's the main purpose. And finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.